Fear was good. The game, I mean, the emotion's pretty mediocre. Black Opsy military shooters are and were ridiculously common, but the charm and spook factor Fear introduced was new. Trepang 2 very openly tries to rekindle this charm. The guns are Fear, the setting is Fear, the post-processing and graphics are Fear. It's the sequel Fear never had, except Fear did have a sequel, so let's say it's the sequel to the sequel Fear had, although that also exists, but who the hell cares? I mean, it has to be a sequel to something. I can't find any information on Trepang 1. It's like hunting for the Dead Sea Scrolls. You play a super soldier of indeterminate origin rampaging through the assets of Horizon Corporation. Killing their VIPs, taking their toys, seducing their cryptids. You're doing this for some transparently generic secret task force, and that's pretty much it for exposition. Visually, the game is a monstrous mass of post-processing. Very pretty post-processing, it's all very Michael Bay. The textures and models are deliberately curved realism. It's hard to explain what I mean by that. It's a good thing. Lighting and reflections look really good, really realistic, as does everything else. But it deliberately keeps everything just that little bit cartoonish and unrealistic. It helps prevent Uncanny Valley, and it makes the game more unique than just, yeah, it burns out your graphics card, you'll get a whole 6 FPS, and we'll talk about ray tracing all the fucking time. Also, it's got a lot of giving and gore, which never gets old. And no, I won't defend that statement in court. If you look at the trailers, there's stuff to help with motion blur as well, but I turned that off. I don't want motion blur because things in motion already blur. That's how eyes work. The fundamental gameplay is an interesting cross between Fear and Crysis. The rifle's from Crysis, but it shoots like the one in Fear. You slow down time like in Fear, but you can cloak like in Crysis. You can grab enemies like in Crysis, and you can shit your pants like in Fear. It's fast, tactical, and relies pretty heavily on headshots. Weapons have a multitude of attachments, and relatively early on you can unlock the ability to dual wield them. This makes them hilariously inaccurate, but you have so much ammo that you don't give a shit. The weapon balance though, it's kind of funny. Anything incendiary sucks because the burning bodies it leaves behind are basically landmines, and it doesn't seem to really do much extra. Shotguns are really strong. Anything accurate is really strong because, again, headshots are great. Rapid fire weapons, kind of underwhelming. SMGs are just bad shotguns, and the minigun is only usable because you can do the 13-month spin up while you're cloaked. Quite a lot of the combat is based on abusing the cloak, actually. Most enemies are your typical Spec Ops shooty-shoot boys and love a bit of suppressive fire. Best tactic is to cloak, go behind them, kill a few of them, rinse and repeat, do that over and over. Especially when you consider that you need to attack enemies to get the matrix effect to charge up. The cloak just recharges on its own, so you can use it again and again and again. It doesn't feel cheap, a little repetitive maybe, and a bit of a power fantasy, but you're a bizarre super mutant and they're stinky normal people, so power fantasy makes sense. Also, that cloaking thing is a gameplay choice and remains a choice up until certain difficulty settings, so I can't really complain about things I chose to do. The difficulty settings are interesting. It's one of those games with probably way too many difficulty settings. In my head, I presume from that many difficulty settings means there wasn't as much time or care put into them. That's a big presumption, but even games with 3 or 4 difficulty settings often just change damage and health scaling. So when there's 6 of them, and the last one has a warning that the publisher didn't want them to include it, and almost everything's a one-hit kill, pretty safe to assume damage scaling plays a big part. All of my footage is from my playthrough, which was in very hard, which is funnily enough the last difficulty that doesn't have a warning when you try to play it. Except for a couple of missions I did in rage mode. And from what I played of that, it's definitely possible. I mean, Steam achievements suggest plenty of people have beaten it. I wouldn't recommend it. For a first playthrough, definitely, for obvious reasons. Also, I'm not sure I would want to do it at all. Enemies react instantly, they kill you in 1 to 3 hits. So it's basically just a case of abusing the AI and having to watch them constantly turn to face you in cloaks so you can't get a grab and instead die. And then just trying to do that 10 times until you finally get it. If you like that, then sure, go ahead. I wouldn't say it makes the game more interesting. Arguably, it doesn't even add that much in the way of mechanical complexity. But it's not horrible. You get bragging rights. Imagine the pussy you'll get when you tell girls you beat Trepang 2 in rage mode. The mission's general structure and design is really cool for the main story. They're big, Each one has a different theme, often revolves around some sort of cryptid. Yeah, one of those cryptids is kind of backrooms related, which is a horse that's been beaten so much it looks like Hamburger Helper. But they make it interesting, so I can't complain. Plus, the game's been in development a while, so the trope might have still been alive and kicking at that point. These levels are at their best when they use dynamic environments full of enemies that you have to aggressively push through. They're at their worst when they lock you in an arena for an extended period and just throw waves of enemies at you. Not bad, just repetitive. Because it doesn't have the enemy variety of a game like Doom Eternal, it can't get away with waves and waves of enemies as easily. This proves a bit of a problem with the side missions, as most of them are these survival type situations where you're locked in a small building and have to fight 7-8 waves of enemies. And it's always military enemies. Again, a bit repetitive. I don't really like wave survival deals anyway, so that's not really objective, it's just an opinion. I mean, it's all an opinion, everything's an opinion, shape of the world's an opinion, apparently. I won't spoil anything, but the plot doesn't really get much thicker than the exposition previously mentioned. It's not bad, pretty standard secretive military shooter stuff. The cryptids and all that sort of horror element stuff adds a really good extra layer which makes it stand out. Without that, it would have probably been a bit dull and generic. The music's high octane, good production value. It's not masterpiece level like say some of the stuff from Ultra Kill, but the guy who makes that's a fucking composer, so it's not fair at all. If anything, he should be punished for putting the bar so high. Let me think. Any miscellaneous stuff. Tomahawks suck balls, they don't kill most enemies in one hit. It's real easy to game end yourself with grenades. I cannot stress enough how bad Incendiary is. The stealth system is rudimentary to a degree where it's almost pointless. The slogan for the casual difficulty is a bit condescending or not condescending enough depending on who you ask. I still don't know what rat bombs do, and one of the side missions is a really boring rat and a maze simulator, which the atmosphere does not make up for. I'm having to nitpick for all those little things I don't like and sort of exaggerate massively about how bad Incendiary is, which means the game's generally pretty solid. If you think it's for you, it probably is. If you don't think it's for you, I don't care. It's pretty clear cut. A bit like pressing this big red button. Go away.